All right, and welcome back to the forecast card. Unfortunately, losing day, bit of a frustrating one. I think every loss was, I would argue, somewhat winnable, except for the Santa Clara one. That was pretty. That was one of those pathetic performances I thought I've ever seen. I really thought they were gonna make a run here and have a chance to win the tournament, but losing to Pepperdine is just. Oh my god! I don't know. Maybe Pepperdine just had one of their best games ever. I don't know, but Santa Clara looked completely shit. Like, obviously they were 15.5 point favorites for a reason, and they just lost by two. Clearly, I was on the wrong side. I didn't see something, whatever, but I really thought Santa Clara was going to show up big time. But apparently, they only play good against really good teams, and they just really play down to their competition because that was pathetic. Anyway, High Point, not at all sweat free. That game looked dead early on. They just couldn't hit a single bucket, especially from three. But they locked back in, ended up winning this game by double digits. So pretty solid. Iowa completely dominated that game. I knew they would play hard. I didn't think they'd win by that much, but I thought it would be really close. But they completely annihilated Nebraska, which is pretty embarrassing for them. Minnesota should have covered. It's classic dogs lose an OT. Rutgers just could not miss it overtime. End up winning this game by 8. It is what it is. Colgate, pretty shitty second half. They were winning at half by like 1 point. It seemed like a really competitive game, but they just imploded to start the second half and just never had enough time to get back into it. The over in the Delaware William and Mary game was pretty sweat free. The total ends up around like 180-ish, so that was pretty easy. Charlotte, this game was tight. They ended up losing this game by 3. Just so close, man. It sucks that UTSA shot 50% from 3. They missed like 1-3 we cover, but yeah, I don't really understand. Like when I cap some games, I assume a certain thing's gonna happen. And this game, Charlotte shot 29 3-pointers, and they're not really a team that really does that. And I really expected them to play in the paint and just force fouls the entire game, but they barely got to the line. And when they did, they get to the line, they didn't shoot the free throws very well. Yeah, I just read the game plan wrong. I thought Charlotte would just knowingly know that the 3-point defense was pretty good from UTSA, and they would just force themselves to get to the free throw line, but that just didn't happen. So good on UTSA. It seems like they made some kind of shift, or maybe the Charlotte coach sucks, but not at all how I would have played it. And obviously the shittiest game of the day, terrible read on Santa Clara. I had a future on them to win this conference tournament, but for some reason, especially if you look at their power ratings against certain teams, they're like the best team in college basketball against like top 25 teams, but apparently when they play these bums, they just cannot figure it out. I'm glad they ended up losing outright because that was a very pathetic performance. They did not play a lick of defense, and obviously they couldn't make up the difference with their really shitty shooting. So good on Pepperdine. I think Pepperdine's going to get crushed by St. Mary's defense tomorrow. I'm not actually going to take that game because Pepperdine's earned my respect. I'm not going to fade them. But yeah, 3-4 on the day, slight losing day. Again, no locks today. I really hate these slates. These tournament games are kind of disgusting. I'm excited for next week once we get some real basketball, but I do have 7 bets. I'm going to be honest, I don't love any of them, so feel free to not tail any of these, but I just feel like I have to play some action. And I found a couple sides, some model, some just unique spots where teams typically play better. But yeah, let's get into these 7 games that I'm betting for tomorrow at a quarter unit each. All right, heading on to game number 1, we have Arkansas State versus Troy. On paper, I think Arkansas State is just a slightly better team. They've been, a top 100 team. Troy's kind of been wavering outside of the top 100. But the biggest reason I like this spot is that Arkansas State, they've been one of the better road teams in college basketball, the best in the conference. Troy's number 2 on the road. Again, you kind of really like to look at neutral games. They're just not enough for a strong enough sample. I think away games give you a better idea of how the team's going to perform. But yeah, I think Arkansas State, they really show up on the road. They've been playing better basketball in their last few games. Troy has kind of looked a little bit worse than they did all season. And both these teams play a really weird form of basketball. Obviously, both these teams are pretty consistent, especially Troy. But man, when you look at what these two teams do, like offensively, they're both gonna do 2 things. They both suck at shooting everything. They're both terrible offensive teams. Arkansas State is ranked, high 200s in 3-point percentage, mid-range percentage, and near basket percentage. Troy ranked in the low 300s in all three as well. Both teams are better defensively, but I think Arkansas State here is just the better defensive team where it matters. Arkansas State, they're a team that shoots up a decent amount of threes. They're not really going to have a lot of success in the paint here, but they will have a lot more success on the offensive glass. Troy ranked 250th in giving up offensive boards. Troy top 100 in second chance opportunity percentage. They're going to have Troy turns the ball over a decent chunk more than Troy does, or Arkansas State does. Troy does force more turnovers, so I think it's going to kind of balance itself out. But Arkansas State, they just play a little bit faster. I think they're going to be able to force a bit more turnovers if the pace of the game ends up being a little quicker than Troy's used to. Typically leads to more turnovers for the team that plays a little bit slower. Both these teams are going to get to the line a decent amount. Arkansas State probably will get to the line less, but they shoot free throws better. It's just a weird game, man. Both these teams, Arkansas State, pretty elite defensive, top 75 in 3-point percentage, mid-range percentage, and near basket percentage. I think Troy's really going to struggle here, especially if they're not getting whistles. Again, Arkansas State has been the better team in the Sun Belt. I'm taking them on the money line here. Both teams are due for a little bit of regression, but not enough to lean me either way. In terms of looking at how these teams perform on neutral courts, I don't really like to look at that because the sample is so small in any given season. So I typically like to look at the away a bit more. And Arkansas State is is the best away team in the conference. Troy is number 2. But if you look at the last 10, Arkansas State's been playing way better basketball, being a top 100 team over the last 10 games. Meanwhile, Troy has not been. They've fallen almost outside of the top 100 in the last 10 games. They were playing much better early on in the season. And Arkansas State really plays well against these teams like Troy, which are like these middle major teams. Typically where Arkansas shows up the most are against top 100 teams. That's who they love to play. Troy is just barely there. But in my opinion, when I see a team that plays well against the elite teams, that typically means that they have another level that they can get to. That Troy I just don't think has. Troy really struggles against these top teams. They typically bully really bad teams. So I think everything all in all, I think Arkansas State has been the better team on the year. We're getting them at a really good line on a neutral court. And I think they had a better performance in the head-to-head. They did split the head-to-head, but Arkansas State blew them out, Troy out on the road, and then lost to a really tight game at home. So I think we're getting Arkansas State here in the revenge spot, the better team defensively, better team on the offensive boards. I think Troy's defensive lacking is going to be a bit of a problem for them. So give me Arkansas State here, money line in game number 1. All right, heading on to game number 2, we have Oakland versus Robert Morris. Now, on paper, Robert Morris obviously the more talented team this year, but Oakland has something that I really love about them, which is the fact that they are a pretty sneaky team. Obviously, they made it to the AA tournament last year. They won the conference last year. They won the regular season last year. This year, not nearly as good of a performance. They won 8 fewer games in the regular season. But I do really like Greg Kampe. You have a really experienced coach that has been in against the wire as an underdog multiple times. And I really do think that there's a good chance here that they show up here against Robert Morris. These two teams have played twice already this year, and Robert Morris won both of them, but the gap did get closer the second time around, and I think that has a lot to do with adjustments on defense. And now that they have 2 extra games under their belt, or 1 extra game under their belt to review, I think they're going to figure out how to stop this Robert Morris team. I think good coaching goes a long way when it comes to winning these kind of really tough games. And Robert Morris, yes, they've been playing really good. They just blew out Wright State in their last game. They beat some pretty good teams by a lot. But Oakland's been playing good too. They had a solid win over Milwaukee. Obviously, they beat Green Bay twice, which is not by any means an impressive win. But they had a pretty solid win over Cleveland State. I think they can keep this game back and forth. Again, obviously, Robert Morris has been the way better team. That goes without saying. But we're getting them on the road. Both these teams have been decent on the on the road. Both teams played better on the road. Robert Morris has played much better on the road, but Oakland has played better on neutral courts. Obviously, again, I said that doesn't really mean anything to me with the small sample size, but you could consider that another away game category. Last 5, both teams have been playing pretty close to top 100 teams. But again, Oakland has played such a harder schedule. Robert Morris has played one of the easiest schedules in college basketball, 257th, the 10th hardest in the conference. Oakland has played the hardest schedule in the conference, 156. I think that really deflates a lot of their stats, especially offensively, having to play against much harder defensive teams. And you look at kind of who this Oakland team plays well against. It kind of fits into this category. They play really good against teams outside of the top 100. Meanwhile, this is a Robert Morris team that kind of plays down to their competition a bit. I don't know. I think in a double revenge spot for Oakland, they have this experience of last year with a few other players making it all the way to the big tournament last year. I think that's going to help them. Robert Morris is due for a good chunk of regression. I think Oakland is going to dominate the offensive boards against a Robert Morris team that's ranked 314th in limiting second chance opportunities. Obviously, Robert Morris is the better offensive team in every other category. They're definitely the better defensive team. But I think Oakland shows up here. They don't foul a lot. And I think the biggest difference that they're going to make this game, if they're trying to make adjustments, is limiting turnovers. And I think they're going to be able to do that. They're going to play a really slow pace. They're going to play a really strategic game where they're probably going to huck up mid-ranges and threes, and have their big men trying to dominate the boards like they typically do. And I think they're going to find some success there. I really do think Oakland, despite being a much worse record, 8 fewer wins than Robert Morris, 9 more losses. I think the line is trying to tell us that these two teams really aren't that far apart, despite what the records say. I think Oakland here comes away with the win. If not, they cover the short spread. All right, heading on to game number 3, we have Montana State versus Idaho State. Now, I think this is a perfect example of a team getting hot at the right time. Idaho State has been a really solid team lately, second best in the conference over the last 5 games. And Montana State is a team that very much, I would say, they rely heavily on their home advantage, which they're not going to have in this game. They're the 60th in college basketball in home advantage. They play much, much worse on the road. Meanwhile, Idaho State has been playing better on the road. Montana State has played a tougher schedule, but in conference, the schedules have been about even. So I think their most recent records kind of indicate how well that they actually are playing. But yeah, if you look on paper here, Idaho State has all the momentum. Montana State, they're a team that's going to probably find some success from 3, but that's basically all they do well. They shoot up a bunch of threes. I think Montana State's going to find some success offensively. But on the other side, I think Montana State is a lot more going to rely on tougher shots. They're going to have to make their threes. They're going to have to make their shots. Meanwhile, Idaho State, they're a team that hucks up a ton of shots. They're going to get to the line a ton. They're a decent free throw shooting team. Offensively, they're terrible. They don't really shoot anything well. But the shot that they do take a lot of is the mid-range, and that's kind of a shot that Montana State doesn't defend well. They're one of the best three-point defenses, but it's not really a shot that Idaho State relies on too much. But I think the biggest thing is Idaho State's going to dominate the boards. They don't turn the ball over. They don't give you any offensive boards. So if Montana State's shots aren't falling, which this is going to be a weird environment for them, I think there's a good chance here that they're gonna fall short. I kind of like the teams that don't necessarily rely on making their baskets. Obviously, field goal percentage, Montana State is the way better team, but offensive boards and free throws are 2 ways to get points that I would say are almost free points. Meanwhile, Montana State, we'll see what they do in this spot. I think on paper they're due for a decent chunk of negative regression. Actually, not very much negative, not really any regression at all. But Idaho State's due for a lot of positive regression. They're the better team on the road. They've been playing better basketball as of lately, and I think we're getting them in the peak of ball here. I think I kind of like to ride the hot wave here, and Idaho State is going to be motivated here to make it further in this tournament than they have before. I think they have a good shot at it. So give me Idaho State here on the money line. All right, heading on to game number 4, we have Incarnate Word versus Nicholls. Now, Nicholls is a team that I backed a lot throughout the year, and they kind of always fucked me over and over again. So I don't really trust them. They're a team that definitely will rely heavily on making their shots, but I think this is actually a tough matchup for them. Nicholls are actually a team that takes a lot of near basket shots. 43% of shots are in the paint. And Incarnate Word is a really good paint defense. That's really all they defend well. They're a top 100 near basket team. They don't turn the ball over too much. Nicholls is a team that does rely heavily on getting points off steals. Nicholls probably will find some success from 3. It's kind of somewhere where they have been playing decently well. But they're pretty selective with their shots that they do take. They're not going to get any offensive boards. They'll get to the line a decent amount, but they're a really bad free throw shooting team, sub 70% average. And on the other side, Incarnate Word, they're one of the teams that shoot the most mid ranges in college basketball, ranked 15th, taking about 34%. And they're a really good mid range team, top 50 in mid range percentage, and that's the spot that Nicholls fails to defend. They're an elite team at defending the near basket. They defend the 3 decently well. They don't turn the ball over at all. But the 2 things that Incarnate Word does to score is they shoot mid-ranges, and they're really good on the offensive boards. And those are 2 spots that Nicholls doesn't defend well. They're ranked 336 in defending the mid-range, and they're ranked 185th at limiting second chance opportunity percentage. So Incarnate Word top 50 in both second chance opportunity percentage and mid-range. They're going to find the shots that they want to take. And I think if you look at regression, Incarnate Word is due for a lot of regression. They've had a pretty unlucky year. They're 12 and 15. They should be 16 and 11. Nicholls basically playing at the level that they are kind of expected to play at. Furthermore, we're getting Incarnate Word in a true run spot here. These 2 teams played once this year, and Nicholls won that game by 6 at home. But now we're getting them in a revenge spot on the road, where they have been playing better. Nicholls is a pretty decent road team. They play much better on the road. But if you look at their last 5 games, they've actually been kind of regressing to end off the year. Incarnate Word's been playing a little bit better than they did to start the year. But if you look at who this is an Incarnate Word, that team that sucks against bad teams, but they have played really well against top 100 teams. Nicholls obviously isn't that, but again, when I look at those kind of stats, it typically means to me that Incarnate Word has the ability to play at another level when it matters. And I think this is going to be a spot in a tournament where they really play to the best of their ability, pretend like that Nicholls is a top 100 team. I think this is a spot here where Incarnate Word either wins this game outright or loses by 20. Obviously, I guess that's not really something that you necessarily want to hear, but you never really know what you're going to get with Incarnate Word here. But they are a team that's going to find a lot of success. Nicholls has been a good team as away favorites, and they've been really good with a lot of rest. They're 11-2-3 with 4 days off, 11-3-2 as the away team. Obviously, when you look at that, it's like, oh, okay, that's Nicholls should be free, and I get it. But Incarnate Word's still 8-6 as an away team. They're still a positive team with a lot of rest, and they have the 1 conference tournament game under their belt. Can't say the same thing here about Nicholls. I think Incarnate Word has the rust off them a little bit. They're 1-0 against the spread against ranked teams. They're 2-0 on neutral sites already this year against the spread. This is going to be the first neutral game experience for Nicholls this year. No idea how they're going to really handle the pressure. Yeah, give me Incarnate Word here to cover the plus 4.5. All right, and that brings us to game number 5, which is Cleveland State versus Youngstown. Now, Cleveland State was a weird team this year. They obviously are an elite team, but they had, after their crazy hot streak, they kind of cooled off a little bit to end off the year. But this is a Youngstown team that I think is really fraudulent. They're 18-12, but they've played way over their where they should be. They should be 13-7. Cleveland State due for a little bit of negative regression, but they're still a solid team. They've been the better team on the year. It goes without saying. They played a slightly harder schedule. Cleveland State, they're a team that they're going to find success where they like to shoot. They shoot a lot of mid-range shots. They get offensive boards. They get points off steals. They get to the line. I think that's going to be a big advantage for them. in this game. They're a team that forces a ton of turnovers. On the other side, Youngstown State, they're also going to find some success in this game. They shoot a decent amount of threes. They're not good at them, but they're going to get some points off steals. They're going to get some second chance opportunities. They're going to get to the line. But again, I think Youngstown team is I'm not going to say they're frauds, but I think they're just a little bit too inconsistent of a team, especially when it comes to a Cleveland State team that is, I think, better coached and more disciplined. If you look at the away ratings, obviously Cleveland State, solid road team. Youngstown also a solid road team, but again, I don't like to look at the neutral rating, as I say, but in the games they have played on neutral court, they've looked really bad. If you look at their last 5 games, Youngstown was pretty hot, but they kind of, started to look shit at the end of the year. Cleveland State looked shit, but they started to heat up again a little bit near the end with a pretty solid win. If you look at their most recent games, they both are going to have 4 days off before this game. Youngstown's coming off a pretty solid win over Purdue Fort Wayne. Cleveland State coming off 2 good wins over Purdue Fort Wayne and Northern Kentucky. These 2 teams have played this year. Cleveland State did lose to Youngstown in the head-to-head. They're 1-1. Both teams that won by 8. But it's more fresh for Cleveland State, who lost to Youngstown in February 16th. I think the revenge spot's going to be a bit fresher for them in this spot. And it's not really sure what's going to happen, but we're pretty sure that EJ Farmer is going to be out for this game. It's an undisclosed injury. He didn't play versus Purdue Fort Wayne. And yes, they did win that game, but I think it's going to be much tougher here to beat this more balanced Cleveland State team without your best player, especially when they're in a pissed off revenge spot here. So, I think this is a spot where Cleveland State rolls Youngstown. And I think they're going to have more of the home crowd in this game. So, give me Cleveland State here. Better team on the year. Youngstown are some frauds. Fuck the Penguins. Vikings up. All right, in the last 2 games, these are probably the games that I like the least, which is going to be Idaho and Northwestern State. This is a Portland State team that I think the line is trying to tell me something, that obviously they're the way better team. Especially defensively. They're basically a top 100 defense. Idaho State cannot defend. They're ranked 347th in defense. But the biggest difference when I look at these 2 teams is that Idaho is an elite free throw shooting team, and Portland State is one of the worst free throw shooting teams. And when you're getting points with a team in a conference game, I kind of want to lean here with Idaho. I think they're gonna lock in. They're one of those teams that sometimes plays well, sometimes plays terrible. If you look at regressional stats, Idaho is a team that is due for a decent chunk of positive regression. Sacramento State has been playing really well. Portland State has been playing really well, but they're due for a good chunk of negative regression. They've been playing a little bit over their head. I think we're getting Idaho here at a really good price in a neutral court setting. If you look at these 2 teams, obviously power rating wise, Portland State is the better team, but they've been getting worse to end off the year. Idaho's kind of looked a little bit better to end off the year. But the biggest thing for me is that Portland State is a team that really relies on the home court. Most of their wins come at home. They have one of the top 25 home advantage in college basketball, number 1 in the conference. This is a Idaho State team that does play a little bit better on the road. In the last few games, they've been playing better. I don't know. Again, I don't love the spot because this is still a Portland State team that has the ability to blow teams out. But Portland State's kind of looked meh. They only put up 59 points in their last game. Idaho had a tough game, but they still put up 60 points, 81. 65, 74, 83. They're not a good offensive team, but they're still scoring against some decent defenses. Portland State, they're clearly just a defensive team. They're not very good offensively. They do limit teams, 56, 76, 52. When these 2 teams played, though, Portland State won both matches by 12 and by 7. But again, kind of leaning towards the fact that an away court is where Idaho's going to have a better chance. We're going to get them here in a revenge spot. if you look a little bit into their power ratings when it comes to time off, because some teams do get really sluggish when they rest. It's kind of a big reason why I like them in this spot. With 4 days off, Idaho is 8-3 at covering. Portland State is still 8-4 in covering, but with equal rest, I think Idaho here shows up. They've been pretty solid in these conference games. Yeah, again, I don't love the spot, but I think Idaho is on paper the right side. So give me Idaho here, the better free throw shooting team. And Portland State, sure, they're great defensive, but they're still a dog shit offensive team. And Idaho State is still a decent team at limiting offensive boards. That's a place where Portland State kind of relies heavily on getting points. So I think Idaho can keep this game close. Better road team, slightly harder schedule, and we're getting them in a double revenge spot in a tournament where I think they're going to show up. So give me Idaho, plus 4.5. All right, and this brings us to our final game, which is Northwestern State versus Texas A&M Corpus Christi. I like Northwestern State here. They play really good on the road, and I think they have decent matchup here. If you look at where they like to score, they're a team that typically shoots everything pretty evenly. I think they're going to find some success from three. They're going to get to the line a lot against a Texas A&M CC team that fouls a lot. They're going to get a lot of turnovers. That's the biggest thing. This Texas A&M CC team, they're good, especially offensively, but they turn the ball over a ton. They're ranked 334th in the nation. Northwestern State top 200 in forcing points off steals. They played a much harder schedule. I think that's how they're gonna be able to keep this game close. Texas A&M CC, obviously a really good offensive team, but they do rely heavily on the mid-range and near basket shots. Two places where Northwestern State defends well. They're a top 10 mid-range defense, but even in the near basket defense, they're really good on the offensive glass. Something that Corpus Christi does rely on. Points off steals, they are a better team at forcing turnovers, but Northwestern State is a team that turns the ball over less. And they're also one of the worst free throw shooting teams in college basketball, right? 363. If it does come down to the wire, I think Northwestern State has the advantage on the free throw line. Again, Texas A&M CC, team due for a decent chunk of negative regression. Both teams are technically due for some negative regression. But yeah, this is just a Texas A&M CC team that relies heavily on the home advantage. They're top 22 home advantage in college basketball. They play significantly worse on the road and in a neutral environment. They've been decent in the last few games, but Northwestern State has played better to end the year. They're a team that does play better on the road, significantly more better than the regression that hits this Texas A&M CC team when they play on the road. I genuinely think this is a spot here where Northwestern State can keep the game close. They play these top 100, top 200 teams really closely. It's kind of their bread and butter. And Texas A&M does play down to their competition historically. Looking at both of these two teams, I just really love this spot here for Northwestern State. As the road team, they're 11-5 against the spread. Texas A&M CC only 6-6 as in a road team. Northwestern State has been the better team at covering, especially with good rest. These two teams they haven't played other than one game this year, early in January, and that was a game where Texas A&M CC was at home, and it was a 9-point game. Again, Texas A&M CC, they're such a much better team at home that now they're going to be forced in a much awkwarder environment. With Northwestern State in a revenge spot. Yeah, I really like the spot for Northwestern State. So yeah, those are the 7 games that I'm betting just to corner unit tomorrow. I really don't love any spot. Just to recap, Northwestern State plus 4.5, Arkansas State moneyline, Oakland plus 2.5, Idaho State moneyline, Incarnate Word plus 4.5, Cleveland State -2, and Idaho plus 4.5. I might end up betting Gonzaga versus San Francisco. We'll see what that line is. The game just kind of finished as I'm recording this, so I'm not sure what the line is yet, but check the pinned comment if I end up betting it. These are the 7 games that I like. Don't love any of these spots, no locks again. Hopefully the other tournaments bring some more exciting spots here, but in terms of leans, I do think Towson's the better team. Delaware can't stay this hot forever. Furman, they're a team that's due for a ton of regression. But both teams shoot a lot of threes. But Furman just has a much better 3-point defense, so I think they can pull out the difference in that game. Charleston, I hate this team, but I think UNC Wilmington is a fraud, and I think they're a team that relies way too heavily on one player. If he doesn't play well, they suck. And Pepperdine plus 1.5, plus 1/2, plus 11. I think St. Mary's is going to roll them in the second half, but they haven't played in a long time. I think they're going to come out a little bit cold. Pepperdine is going to be rolling with all this energy and adrenaline after just beating fucking Santa Clara outright. They're going to keep that momentum into like the first 10 minutes of the game. While St. Mary's is cold, they're going to get a bit of a lead. They're going to end up losing the first half by like 8 points and cover the first half. So might actually end up betting that. We'll see. But fuck Pepperdine. They really screwed me today. But yeah, that's everything. Hopefully we get back to the green tomorrow. If you have any questions or opinions on any games, let me know down below. And if there's any angles that you like, please let me know your picks. And I will see you guys all tomorrow.